Welcome to Chris Strub Unmuted. I'm Chris Strub, and today we're talking about Greenville, South Carolina. I didn't even know that Greenville existed until 2014. I had no idea. I hardly knew that South Carolina existed. I hadn't included Greenville on my official itinerary, and I made a last-second decision to drive up to Greenville. That decision ended up changing the course of my whole life. This is Chris Strub Unmuted, a show designed for open dialogue, honest reflection, and uncensored truth about the lives we lead. Today's episode looks at Greenville, South Carolina. It is the place that I now call home. I very much consider it a second home. You can take the Long Islander out of Long Island. But for me, if you know anything about me over the last decade or so now, you know a little bit, at least, about my love for Greenville. And one of the questions that I get asked the most is, why Greenville? Why Greenville? I'm also getting asked lately, why start a podcast? And it's funny how these questions kind of converge here, in that I can really get into more of the minutia and give you the answer that I want to give you when you ask, but yet in conversation at a coffee shop or at the gym or whatever, why Greenville? I get like 5 seconds to answer. And when you start your own podcast, you can kind of talk for as long as you want. So Max, my producer, buckle up. I could talk for hours about everything that I've come to love about Greenville, South Carolina over the last 12 years now. I first encountered Greenville. I didn't even know that Greenville existed until 2014. I had no idea. I hardly knew that South Carolina existed. I'm being a bit sarcastic, but I couldn't tell you anything about the state of South Carolina until I came and visited in person during a big road trip that I took in the summer of 2014. So May 29th, 2014, I left Long Island. I left Binghamton, New York, and went on a 48 state, 90-day road trip. And my South Carolina stop that summer was in Columbia. I forget the exact date. It was near the end. It was like the beginning of August. And there was a thunderstorm coming through, and I wasn't all that impressed with Columbia. I think I stopped at the USC campus, and I hadn't included Greenville on my official itinerary. And I made a last second decision to drive up to Greenville and add on a stop along that journey. And that decision ended up changing the course of my whole life, right? If I had just continued on that journey and gone straight on through Columbia, I was heading back up north. I was heading east back towards through Virginia, North Carolina, up through Maryland, DC, et cetera, et cetera. And I decided to call an audible, which I rarely did because I was driving to 48 states in 90 days, a lot of freaking driving. But I had heard and read some things about Greenville, South Carolina, and I didn't want to miss out on saying that I had at least been there. And what's funny is that my experience in Greenville hardly reflected any of all of the wonderful things that I would eventually come to both learn about online and then end up discovering more in person, of course, afterwards. I remember coming down Augusta, if you're familiar with Greenville, coming down past Gather Greenville hadn't even been a twinkle in someone's eyes at that point. But imagine driving past where Gather Greenville is now, in from the west side of Greenville. And I did not continue on along that journey through downtown. So I came up to downtown. I made a left there. The apartment building that I would eventually move into had not been built yet either. So I was right along that road there. Link Apartments is where I used to live, which is why I named, one of the big reasons why I named my dog Link. So all this stuff looked very, very different back in 2014, but I didn't know when I drove up to the edge, if you will, of downtown Greenville, that the most beautiful waterfall in the country was like 300 yards from where I was, right? So when I came to Greenville in 2014, I didn't go to Falls Park. I didn't go to all the touristy stuff that you might expect, right? I ended up, pretty sure this was a Monday that I first visited Greenville, and I ended up staying at a hotel out on Pleasantburg Drive. I went to, I think it was like, I forget the name of the barbecue place that I wanted to go to, but it was closed because I'm pretty sure it was a Monday and everything's closed in the South on Mondays. So I ended up going to a different barbecue place and completely fell in love with that barbecue place that night. And that experience stuck with me. And why is the name of this barbecue? I got to look it up now. Chris Strub, top places to eat. It's a real shame that I did not pull up this blog before I started recording. Yeah, there it is. So this place that I went to, obviously so memorable that I forgot its name, but it's called Bacon Brothers Public House. And it was out on Pelham Road. And I have a blog post up on teamstrub.com, which I'll make sure Max puts in the show notes here, called Eating Around America, written September 3rd, 2014. There's an accompanying video with a much younger looking Chris Strub there. And I declared Bacon Brothers Public House on day 83 of my trip. Yeah, Henry's Smokehouse was a few miles up the road, closed Mondays. And Bacon Brothers Public House was as close as I've seen to the perfect place. I fell head over heels for Bacon Brothers the moment I saw their freshly printed, fully loaded menu. I'm prepared to say it was the best meal of my entire trip and the best meal of my life. And along with that great meal was incredible service and just the friendliest people sitting at the bar around me, and the bartender, Jason, who, like many people that you meet along your life, has drifted out of my life. He's somewhere in my phone. I should send him a text now as I'm recording this. But if I hadn't met Jason, the bartender at Bacon Brothers Public House back in 2014, I don't know that I would live in Greenville, South Carolina right now. And I can only imagine how different my life would be without having had an incredible experience at a barbecue place here in Greenville back in 2014. And that's probably not going to come as a shock to folks that are either from Greenville or live here now. Maybe you moved here around the time that I did, before or after. But the friendliness of people, especially in the service industry, but just generally people that you meet around Greenville, especially back before COVID. And God, we'll talk more as Chris Strub Unmuted evolves about the changes in society in 2020 and beyond. But back in the day, the hospitality and just the general demeanor of people in South Carolina, and specifically in Greenville, was life-changing for me. And after that trip, that 48 state trip, I was on day 83, so I was almost done, right? Almost done with the trip. I went back up to my uncle's cabin in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, York Beach, Maine. Old Orchard Beach is where I went to run a half marathon. It's near York, but not that close. I went back and spent about 2 weeks at my aunt and uncle's cabin in York, and whittled down my choices through a lot of research to two places: Greenville, South Carolina, or Portland, Oregon. And eventually my heart told me that I needed to move to Greenville. And so I did. In September into October 2014, I took the Honda Hotel, my 2007 Honda Accord, and drove it straight back down to Greenville without a job, without a place to live, without any real friends here. I mean, I could text Jason, the bartender. But beyond that, I didn't really know anybody down here either. But I knew in my heart that Greenville was where I was meant to be. And what's funny is that after living in Greenville for about 8-9 months, that's when I embarked on 50 States, 100 Days, the book. So now let's pick up where maybe you're more familiar with the journey. May of 2015, I took a 100-day journey to all 50 U.S. states, starting in Greenville, ending in Asheville, and then I drove back down to Greenville afterwards. I ended up leaving Greenville in October of 2015 after not being able to find a job in the marketing industry here in Greenville. And trust me when I tell you, I applied for every marketing job I could find and couldn't even get so much as a real interview. I did have I had a real legit in-person interview with the Visit Greenville team back in 2015 and was not hired. And so that's what got me back into the newspaper industry. I left my apartment in Greenville in October of 2015 and moved back up to Watertown, New York. I was gone for a couple of years, lived in Watertown. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I lived back at home on Long Island for about a year and a half. And then in 2018, the fall of 2018, I moved back to Greenville. So all of that, take all of that I just kind of said there in the last, 10 minutes in, and imagine having to boil that down to 10 seconds when someone asks you why you chose to move and to live in Greenville. And the fun part really is that in these going on 8 years now since I have moved back, my appreciation and my love for Greenville has really only expanded. As I've matured, as my business has grown, there are just so many different things about Greenville that I love and I can't get enough of. I've loved sharing the city with my family, right? I love having my parents come down. My sister has been down here a couple times to visit Greenville. And now I'm actually a certified tourism ambassador for the city of Greenville and for Visit Greenville. So talk to me, send me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. I can tell you even more things about how you can craft your own great experience if you're coming to visit Greenville. Or if you're considering moving here, like I did, both semi-permanently in that apartment downtown for about 7 years, and now permanently here. I live in a suburb of Greenville called Malden. It's about 12 to 15 minutes east of downtown Greenville, and it's wonderful. I love it. I found an incredible house. I worked with the best agent in Greenville. Her name is Tony Leopard, who has been an enormous part of my growth and journey here in Greenville, as she's also my favorite Orange Theory fitness coach of all time. And I've taken something like 600, 700 classes with Coach Tony over the years before, working with her to identify and buy a house. And it's people like Tony Leopard who I've just been able to meet more and more and more of over the years to really make my own experience here in Greenville feel special. The barbecue is one thing, and you could still certainly find great barbecue here in Greenville. But although Bacon Brothers Public House is long gone, can't believe they didn't make it. Very, very sad. Pour out a little C4 for Bacon Brothers. But for me, it's more about finding a lot of Jasons out there. I've been incredibly blessed, especially through Orange Theory, but not just OTF, through all the different social experiences that I've had over the years to build a network of people that are really special to me. To build a network of friends and business connections, and I've been able to, as will be a recurring theme through Strub Unmuted, really use social media to stay connected with a lot of these folks as our paths have woven in and out. Certainly a lot of people have left Greenville, since I met them, and new people are moving here all the time. But it's just such a warm, welcoming, just a special community with great food, great weather. I mean, I'm recording here in late December, and it's like 65 degrees outside, which is interesting, but just really supportive communities, especially the various fitness communities that I've been part of. And I try and dress specifically for these episodes. If you're listening on audio, I'm wearing a gray pullover here that says on this part of my chest here, it says Greenville Running Company. So big shout out to my friend Jeff Milliman, who owns Greenville Running Company. Just the most knowledgeable running wizard you'll ever encounter. Just a man. If you think I've got stories, they should do Jeff Milliman unmuted. Although you don't have to unmute Jeff. If you know Jeff, he's never got the mute button on. And then here on my left chest here, it says Greenville Track Club. Green Valley Road Race is one of the great events that GTC puts on throughout the years. So big shout out to all my friends at GTC and the Upstate Running Club, which is another big club with hundreds and hundreds of members, really supports young people getting involved with running around the Greenville area and around the upstate. You can talk about how Greenville is just about an hour and a half from Charlotte, about an hour and a half from Atlanta, and just over an hour from Asheville. But for me, I rarely go to those places. I don't think I've ever really intentionally gone down to spend a day in Charlotte. I've done a day trip to Atlanta and then Asheville, a couple of times. But for me, it's about Greenville. There's plenty to do here. And then as a nimble solopreneur marketer who works frequently and speaks frequently around the country, GSP Airport is another incredible asset to our community. I love flying in and out of GSP. I know a lot of people around here think that you have to drive somewhere like Atlanta or Charlotte for better service, and that is not the case at all. The walls inside of GSP are lined with well-deserved awards for friendly staff and cleanliness and great service. They're constantly expanding and improving, both the flow of traffic and more parking, and it's very cost effective. There's a new Sully Steamers there, so they're supporting local businesses by bringing in a place like Sully's to eat at GSP Airport. I can't get enough of GSP. I can't get enough of downtown Greenville. I've loved attending shows at the Peace Center. I'm a huge fan of the Greenville Drive. I was a season ticket holder for a couple of years. The Greenville Swamp Rabbits, an ECHL affiliate, and a great local hockey team. It's that common refrain of having all of the great things that you love about being in a big city without being in a really big city. And before you start yelling at me about traffic on Woodruff Road, look, I live just, 5-6 minutes from Woodruff Road. It's the holiday season now as we're recording. I get it. But if you think the traffic on Woodruff Road is anything like the traffic that you see in where I'm from, Long Island heading into New York City or any of these other major cities, if you think traffic on Woodruff Road is bad, go spend a weekend in Washington, D.C. or Houston or L.A. or Chicago. Woodruff Road is nothing, guys. Woodruff Road is nothing. Right? So for me, I'm grateful. And I love all of these great things about Greenville, South Carolina. They just make this such a special, supportive place to live. If you start Googling Greenville, the first thing that you're going to find is Falls Park and the Liberty Bridge. And I've been there hundreds of times. It is as wonderful as the pictures and videos that you see make it out to be. I want to give a big shout out to the outgoing mayor, Knox White. I would love an opportunity to maybe try and get the mayor on Chris Strub Unmuted as a guest before he leaves, because, this whole podcast experience for me is about capturing these memories and driving those relationships. And I've seen Mayor White around town at various events. Never had a chance really to say more than hello because I don't want to bother the guy. He's often just walking around by himself, which is really cool. But, the backstory of how his vision really brought Falls Park to life a few decades ago. I mean, that dude is a true icon in the history of our city. And not everyone is going to agree with those statements. I get it. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows when it comes to the storied history of downtown Greenville. Not everything is perfect. I get it. I acknowledge that. And hopefully we can bring on guests to talk about those nuances as well. I'd love to talk through, maybe we do a whole month's worth of episodes about Greenville itself. Much like my buddy Griffin, who does the Upstate Trail Talks podcast of his own. I got to run the Ville-to-Ville Sprint Relay with Griffin a few weeks ago. So shout out to you, Griffin. That's why I got the hat on. And we're going to crack open, I love my C4 proposed product placement here. Hashtag not sponsored, but we're going to crack open a purely GVL here to start to wrap up this episode. This is Greenville water. Let's read from the can here. But it's not just water, it's Greenville water. That reedy spark, that falls fizz, that upstate effervescence, which is spelled wrong, but that's okay. Yeah, that water. And it's labeled from Run In and Double Stamp Brewery, packed at Double Stamp in Greenville, South Carolina. Purely GVL water. Let's give it a swig. It's delicious. The best of the upstate. Greenville tap water, canned right at one of my favorite. Double Stamp Brewery is amazing. I've run so many races there and pounded so many post-race beers there. Big shout out to all my friends at Double Stamp. Guys, I could go on and on and on and on about my love for Greenville. I'd love to hear in the comments what it is that you love about Greenville. Or maybe you don't know anything about Greenville and you have questions about whether it's the restaurant scene or the housing market or the fitness scene. Man, we're going to have to do a whole separate episode just on the fitness scene around Greenville too. I'm looking really at this first drop of episodes as setting the scene for what's to come with Chris Strub Unmuted. And I think we can definitely spend a lot more time diving into Orange Theory Fitness and Run Club GVL, which I love. Big shout out to Ashley, the founder, and the hundreds and hundreds of members of Run Club GVL. Maybe we'll see if we can get Ashley on the podcast sometime as well. But so many different little pockets of love and great energy and just wonderful sub communities around Greenville that I'm thrilled to be able to be part of in my own ways, my own introverted ways, that I wish sometimes that I could put myself out there more and be more involved with all of these different communities. But this is my journey. This is Chris Strub Unmuted. And I'm grateful to everyone in Greenville that has made my journey here special over the last 7, 8, 10, 12 years, depending on how you want to add it up. Thank you. I appreciate you. And Jason, thanks for listening, man. Thanks for listening to Chris Strub Unmuted. Support the show by clicking like and subscribe. Keep up with me on social media at Chris Strub. And remember, we are all famous to a few people.